What these lifetime mechanics couldn't possibly know was that their biggest mistake wasn't doubting her abilities. It would be underestimating what she was about to discover beneath their very feet. Before we jump into this incredible story, tell us where you're watching from, and if this resonates with you. Make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow's story will blow your mind even more. But let's start from the beginning, before we jump back in. Tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The weathered storefronts of Millbrook Harbor's automotive district stretched along the waterfront like forgotten monuments to better times. Their peeling paint and rust-stained awnings told stories of decades when this Massachusetts coastal town thrived as a fishing and shipping hub. But those glory days had faded 25 years ago when the naval shipyard closed, leaving behind a community of skilled workers, struggling to adapt to an economy that no longer needed their expertise. Among the businesses still clinging to survival was a cluster of auto repair shops, their service bays echoing with the familiar sounds of pneumatic tools and diesel engines from sunrise to sunset. These family-owned operations had weathered economic storms, changing technologies, and fierce competition from chain stores. But they endured through sheer stubbornness and generational loyalty from customers who valued personal relationships over corporate efficiency. The monthly meeting of the Millbrook Harbor Business Coalition was underway at Murphy's Tavern, a local institution where handshake deals were still honored and community issues were debated over plates of fish and chips. Coffee mugs clinked against scarred wooden tables while the aroma of fried seafood mixed with cigarette smoke that seemed permanently embedded in the walls despite the smoking ban. Frank Torino, whose family had operated Torino's garage for 4 decades, commanded attention from his usual corner booth. At 54, his calloused hands and permanently grease-stained fingernails testified to thousands of hours spent diagnosing engine problems and rebuilding transmissions. The Torino name was synonymous with honest work in Millbrook Harbor, their blue and white sign a landmark on Harbor Avenue since 1983. Mitchell finally threw in the towel on that place of his. Frank announced to the gathered business owners, gesturing toward the window that faced the waterfront district. Closed the doors permanently last Thursday after barely staying afloat for 4 years now. About time, nodded Patricia Kellerman, who ran Kellerman Parts and Supply from the same building her father had established after returning from Vietnam. Her family had been the go-to source for automotive parts in Millbrook Harbor for 50 years, building relationships with mechanics throughout the region. That building's been deteriorating since the hurricane. Damage in 18. Mitchell never recovered financially after his back surgery. The building in question, formerly Mitchell's Auto Service, sat on a prime corner lot with partial harbor views from its second-floor office space. The property had been struggling with code violations, outdated equipment, and mounting repair costs that had overwhelmed its previous owner. Local contractors estimated it would require substantial investment just to bring it up to current safety standards. "Who's going to want that headache?" asked Tommy Ritchie, whose towing service had been pulling disabled vehicles off Route 1A since the early 1990s. "Place needs new lifts, updated electrical, and God knows what else. You're looking at 6 figures minimum before you could even think about opening for business." Before Frank could respond, Patricia's nephew Marcus, who handled the computer systems for several local shops, joined the conversation with news that caught everyone's attention. "Someone already bought it," he said, lowering his voice despite the tavern's noisy atmosphere. "Came into our store yesterday asking about diagnostic equipment and setting up wholesale accounts. Some lady who's never owned a shop before." A murmur of surprise rippled through the group. Mitchell's Auto Service had been on the market for over a year, with its asking price steadily dropping as potential buyers were scared off by the extensive renovation requirements and questionable return on investment. The building inspector had flagged numerous violations and rumors about environmental contamination from decades of automotive fluids had further complicated any potential sale. A woman? Frank's wife Rosa raised an eyebrow as she slid into the booth beside her husband. Rosa managed the financial side of Torino's garage and understood better than most how challenging the repair business had become, with razor-thin profit margins and constant pressure from corporate chains offering cheaper, if less personalized, service. "What's your background?" asked Patricia, genuine curiosity mixing with skepticism. The automotive industry in Millbrook Harbor was built on family traditions and proven track records. Newcomers, regardless of gender, faced an uphill battle earning trust from both customers and fellow mechanics. "General repair shop, apparently," Marcus replied, stirring his coffee thoughtfully. "Said something about transparent pricing and digital customer service. Had some kind of online certification. From a technical college program. Kept talking about modernizing auto repair and making it more accessible to regular folks." Tommy Ricci gave a dismissive snort. "Modernizing? You mean undercutting established businesses with lowball estimates and then hitting customers with surprise charges? That's how these chain operations work." "If she can even get the place operational," Patricia added. "Mitchell's equipment was ancient when he bought it secondhand. That hydraulic lift hasn't been properly serviced in years, and the diagnostic computer system was already obsolete when Windows XP was current. Did anyone ask what she paid for it?" Rosa inquired, her accountant's instincts focusing on the financial aspects. "Mitchell was asking $45,000 last I heard, which was already a fire sale price considering the real estate value alone." Marcus's expression conveyed his disbelief before he spoke. $900. That's what she told Patricia when she was setting up her parts account. $900? Frank repeated, nearly choking on his beer. "The diagnostic equipment alone is worth more than that, even if it is 10 years outdated." The group exchanged glances of amazement and suspicion. Such an absurdly low price suggested either desperate circumstances on the seller's side or hidden problems that made the property essentially worthless. Commercial real estate in Millbrook Harbor, even in the declining industrial district, typically commanded prices reflecting decades of appreciation and waterfront proximity. "She's got a teenage daughter too," Marcus continued. "Kid looked embarrassed to be there, but she seemed to know her way around computers. Asked about our inventory management system and whether we had mobile payment processing." "No husband?" Patricia asked, though her tone suggested professional curiosity rather than gossip. "Didn't see one. Just the two of them, looking like they were starting completely over." Frank shook his head with the certainty of someone who had witnessed many business failures over the years. "I give her 6 months tops. Remember that guy from Springfield who tried to open that performance modification shop back in 19? Lasted 8 weeks before the first lawsuit shut him down." The conversation might have continued along these predictable lines, but the tavern's front door opened with its characteristic squeal, admitting a gust of salt air and the last person any of them expected to see at a gathering of established Millbrook Harbor business owners. Sarah Martinez stood in the doorway, scanning the room with determined brown eyes that missed nothing. At 34, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had survived significant hardships and emerged stronger. Her auburn hair was pulled back in a practical ponytail, and while her clothes were clearly new dark work pants, a burgundy button-up shirt, and steel-toed boots that hadn't yet acquired the characteristic scuffs of daily use, there was nothing pretentious about her appearance. Beside her stood a teenager with her mother's determined jawline but sporting purple-streaked hair that immediately marked her as someone unafraid to stand out in a conservative town. The girl carried a tablet computer and wore wireless earbuds, her expression oscillating between supportive and mortified at being dragged to this gathering of adults she'd never met. The pair hesitated momentarily, taking in the room full of strangers who had suddenly fallen silent at their entrance. Sarah took a deep breath, squared her shoulders, and walked directly toward the group of business owners who had just been discussing her inevitable failure. "Good evening," Sarah said. As she approached, her voice carrying a slight trace of a Midwestern accent, but projecting confidence that contradicted her newcomer status. "I'm Sarah Martinez, the new owner of what used to be Mitchell's Auto Service. I was hoping to introduce myself to the business community." She extended her hand to Frank, who seemed to be the center of the group's attention. Frank hesitated only briefly before shaking her hand, his experienced mechanic's grip testing hers in the subtle way of men who judge character through handshakes. "Frank Torino," he replied. "My family runs Torino's garage about half a mile down Harbor Avenue from your place." "Torino's garage," Sarah nodded with recognition. "The transmission specialists. I noticed your hydraulic lift system yesterday. Impressive setup for heavy-duty work." Something flickered in Frank's expression, perhaps surprised that she had already been surveying neighboring businesses with enough technical knowledge to identify their specializations. "This is my wife Rosa," he said, gesturing to the woman beside him. "She handles our business operations." "Pleasure to meet you," Rosa said, her tone professionally polite, but carrying the cautious reserve of someone withholding judgment. Her eyes briefly examined the teenager standing slightly behind Sarah. "And this is your daughter?" "This is Emma," Sarah said, resting her hand lightly on the girl's shoulder. "She's my technology manager and digital operations coordinator." Emma stepped forward with surprising poise, despite her obvious discomfort. "Nice to meet everyone. Do you use cloud-based scheduling systems, or are you still managing appointments manually?" Mom's trying to decide which platform would integrate best with the other shops in the area. The unexpected technical question from a purple-haired teenager momentarily stunned the group. It was Patricia who recovered first, her expression shifting from amusement to genuine interest. "Young lady, running an auto shop involves considerably more than choosing software," she said, though her tone carried curiosity rather than condescension. "That building you folks bought hasn't passed a proper inspection in years. Your mother's purchased quite a project." Rather than appearing intimidated, Emma consulted something on her tablet. "We're aware of the electrical code violations in the main service area and the ventilation issues in the paint storage room. But the structural engineer we hired said the foundation and primary building systems are solid. Most of the problems are cosmetic or involve outdated equipment that we're planning to replace anyway." Patricia's eyebrows rose slightly. Emma's response demonstrated more preparation and research than most adults showed when making major business decisions. "I'm Patricia Kellerman," she said, extending her hand to Sarah. "Kellerman Parts has been supplying mechanics in this area since the 1970s. "Of course," Sarah nodded. "Your nephew Marcus helped us set up our wholesale account yesterday. You've built an impressive operation. Family-owned businesses that maintain personal relationships with their customers are exactly what this community needs." "You seem to have done your homework," Patricia acknowledged, though her expression remained guarded. "Mind if I ask what brought you to Millbrook Harbor? It's not exactly a destination for people starting over." Sarah glanced at Emma before answering, and something in that brief exchange suggested a deeper story than casual relocation. "When Millbrook Medical Technologies was acquired by a national corporation last year, my position was eliminated in the restructuring. At first it felt like a disaster, but then I started thinking about what I really wanted for Emma and myself." She paused, looking around at the community of business owners who had gathered for generations to support each other through economic challenges. "My grandfather was a mechanic in Ohio. I spent my childhood in his shop, learning basic repairs alongside my homework. When he passed away 8 years ago, his shop was sold to a chain that doubled the prices and eliminated the personal service that made it special. I always regretted not having the skills or confidence to continue his legacy. There was a sincerity in her words that was difficult to dismiss, a genuine connection to automotive work that transcended business calculations. Emma and I have been living in apartments her entire life. I wanted her to have roots somewhere, to understand what it means to build something meaningful and be part of a community. When I saw the listing for Mitchell's shop at that price, it felt like an opportunity to honor my grandfather's memory while creating a real future for us. Noble intentions, Tommy said, his voice carrying the skepticism of someone who had seen many well-meaning ventures fail. But auto repair isn't a lifestyle choice for most of us. It's our livelihood, and it's more demanding than outsiders usually imagine. The diagnostic technology alone requires constant training and equipment updates. I don't doubt that for a moment, Sarah replied, meeting his gaze directly. And I'm not approaching this as a hobby or lifestyle experiment. I've spent the last year taking certification courses and working under master mechanic David Chen in Springfield. I'm not claiming to have the decades of experience everyone in this room has earned, but I'm not starting from zero either. The mention of David Chen caught Marcus's attention. Chun's auto excellence? That's a solid operation. He's got a reputation for quality work and honest dealing. David taught me that technical skills are only part of what makes a good mechanic, Sarah explained. Understanding customer needs, communicating clearly about problems and solutions, and building trust through consistent reliability, those aspects are just as important as knowing how to rebuild an engine. Before anyone could respond, Emma spoke up with the matter-of-fact confidence that only teenagers possess. Plus, we're not trying to compete with the established shops for their specialty work. We're focusing on basic maintenance and diagnostic services for people who feel intimidated by traditional garages. There's clearly demand for that. Honest mechanics near me is one of the most common automotive searches in this county. You've researched local search trends? Rosa asked, her business manager instincts engaging with this unexpected source of market analysis. I've been analyzing the digital marketing landscape for 6 months, Emma replied, consulting her tablet. Most shops in a 50-mile radius have minimal online presence, and customer reviews consistently mention wanting better communication about repair needs and costs. We're not trying to steal anyone's customers, we're trying to serve people who currently drive to chain stores because they don't feel comfortable with traditional garages. The strategic thinking behind Emma's analysis surprised the group. This wasn't simply naive optimism. It represented genuine market research and business planning. You folks have given this considerable thought, Frank acknowledged, though his tone remained cautious. What exactly are you planning to focus on while you're getting established? We're starting with basic maintenance services, oil changes, brake work, tire rotation, and diagnostic troubleshooting, Sarah explained. Services where the equipment requirements are manageable while I continue expanding my certifications. For more complex repairs, I'm hoping to partner with established shops until I'm fully equipped and qualified. Her answer revealed more thoughtful planning than any of them had expected. Rather than attempting to compete directly with established businesses, she was proposing a collaborative approach that could benefit everyone. I've got a pre-2010 OBD scanner that we upgraded from last year, Frank said after a thoughtful pause. Still works fine for older vehicles. You're welcome to borrow it until you get your diagnostic equipment sorted out. It wasn't an enthusiastic endorsement, but it was a practical gesture of the kind mechanics understood helping a neighbor solve immediate problems while waiting to see if they proved worthy of trust. Thank you, Mr. Torino, Sarah said, recognizing the significance of the offer. I appreciate that more than I can express. Call me Frank, he replied with a slight nod. Everyone does. Rosa, who had been observing the exchange with growing interest, made a decision. Have you two eaten yet? Murphy's fish and chips are worth experiencing, and you should meet the rest of the business community if you're planning to stay. The invitation was qualified, if you're planning to stay, but it represented a small opening in the wall of skepticism that had initially greeted them. "We'd like that very much," Sarah said with a genuine smile. "Wouldn't we, Emma?" Emma nodded, though her enthusiasm seemed tempered by teenage reserve about spending an evening with adults she'd just met. As Rosa led them toward an empty table, the group of business owners watched with expressions ranging from cautious optimism to outright doubt. None of them believed Sarah Martinez would still be operating her shop when winter arrived and the seasonal tourists disappeared. Her plans sounded reasonable in theory, but they had all seen the harsh realities of the repair business destroy better prepared operations. Yet something about her direct manner and evident preparation left them feeling slightly less certain of her failure than they had been before meeting her. She was clearly no dilettante playing at being a mechanic. Whether that would be enough remained to be seen. $50 says she's gone by Christmas, Tommy murmured to Marcus as they watched Sarah introduce herself to the hardware store owner. Marcus considered this, watching as Sarah listened intently to the older man's advice about dealing with local suppliers. "I don't know," he said slowly. "There's something about her. I'm not saying she'd definitely make it, but I'm not betting against her either." Frank, overhearing them, said nothing, but he made a mental note to check his storage unit for other equipment that might be useful for a shop getting started on minimal capital, just in case. 2 weeks after the business coalition meeting, Sarah stood in the center service bay of her newly pressure-washed shop, surveying the progress they'd made and the challenges that remained. The building around her showed signs of gradual improvement. Fresh paint in the customer waiting area, new LED lighting throughout the service bays, and thoroughly cleaned windows that actually let in natural light for the first time in years. But significant problems persisted. The roof still leaked near the back wall during heavy rains, and the ancient air compressor made concerning noises when building pressure. Like everything else in the former Mitchell's auto service, it required more work and money than she had initially budgeted. The building inspection report that had arrived that morning confirmed her suspicions about the electrical system. Before she could install the modern diagnostic equipment necessary for servicing newer vehicles, the entire electrical infrastructure would need upgrading at a cost of nearly $15,000 money she simply didn't have in her carefully planned budget. She was studying the electrician's estimate when the familiar sound of tires on gravel announced a visitor. Patricia Kellerman's delivery truck, bearing the distinctive Kellerman Parts logo, pulled into the freshly swept parking lot. "Morning, Sarah," Patricia called as she climbed out of the truck. Her tone had warmed considerably since their initial meeting, though it still carried the measured caution of someone waiting to see if first impressions would prove accurate. "Good morning, Patricia. I wasn't expecting a delivery today." "Got your order of filters and basic inventory," Patricia replied, lowering the truck's tailgate to reveal neatly organized boxes. "Had to special order those eco-friendly oil disposal containers you wanted. Not much demand for environmentally conscious options around here." "I appreciate you making the effort," Sarah said, watching Patricia unload the supplies. Building environmentally responsible practices into the business from the beginning seemed smarter than trying to retrofit them later. Patricia nodded approvingly. "Smart thinking, though you might find some customers don't care about green practices if it adds to their costs." "Maybe, but I suspect more people care than we realize. They just haven't been given the option." As they moved the boxes into the shop, Patricia surveyed the building improvements with a critical eye. "You've been busy. Got that customer area looking professional. Emma deserves most of the credit for the design. She has better instincts for creating welcoming spaces than I do." "Speaking of Emma, where is she today?" "Working with Jake Sullivan on our computer systems. He's home from college for the summer and has been invaluable getting our digital infrastructure set up." Patricia raised an eyebrow. "Jake Sullivan? Computer science major at UMass? That's him. Emma found him through Some online tech for him. He's building our customer portal and integrating our scheduling system. Jake's a good kid, Patricia acknowledged. His family's been in Millbrook Harbor for generations. If he's helping you, that says something positive about your operation. The endorsement felt significant. Sarah was learning that in a community like Millbrook Harbor, family connections and generational relationships carried weight that couldn't be purchased or faked. I heard you hired the Costello girl for part-time work too, Patricia continued as they finished unloading. Isabella. She's been fantastic, handles phone calls, manages the basic appointment scheduling, and has great instincts with customers. Plus, she actually wants to learn about automotive repair, which is rare. The Costellos are good people, Patricia agreed. Been struggling since the restaurant supply business downsized. Isabella's college fund could probably use the help. Sarah was beginning to understand how Millbrook Harbor operated. Every business decision had personal implications for families who had lived here for decades. Success or failure affected not just her own family, but a network of relationships built over generations. Patricia, can I ask you something? Sure. When I bought this place, Mitchell's children seemed almost desperate to sell quickly. They accepted my first offer without negotiation, which seemed unusual for valuable commercial real estate. Patricia's expression became guarded. The Mitchell family went through some difficult times after his health problems. Between medical bills and the shop's declining revenue, they inherited more debt than assets. Selling quickly was probably their only option to avoid bankruptcy. The explanation made sense, but something in Patricia's tone suggested there might be more to the story. Before Sarah could pursue the question further, Emma appeared in the doorway connecting the shop to the office area. Mom, the website is live and our online scheduling system is working. Jake wants to show you the analytics dashboard. I'll be right there, sweetheart. Patricia watched the interaction with evident approval. That daughter of yours is going to be a real asset to this community. Not many teenagers show that level of commitment to their family's business. She's been my partner through everything, Sarah said with obvious pride. I couldn't have done any of this without her. Well, you better get those computer systems figured out. Word is spreading about your approach to customer service. Patricia Rodriguez from the grocery store mentioned. You spent 20 minutes explaining her car's maintenance needs instead of just telling her what needed fixing. The comment surprised Sarah. That's just good customer service. People deserve to understand what they're paying for. Maybe where you come from, Patricia replied with a slight smile. Around here, mechanics have traditionally been more economical with explanations. As Patricia prepared to leave, she hesitated as if debating whether to share something important. Sarah, there's something you should know. Atlantic Coastal Development has been making inquiries about properties in the automotive district. They've approached several business owners about selling, usually with offers significantly above market value. Development company? They're behind that luxury marina project on the north end of town. Word is they're interested in transforming this entire district into upscale retail and residential space. The kind of development that would eliminate industrial businesses like ours. A chill ran through Sarah that had nothing to do with the ocean breeze. She had invested everything she had financially and emotionally into building a life in this community. The thought of being forced out by development pressure was terrifying. Have they approached you? Not yet, but they've made offers to. Frank and Tommy, neither was interested, but the company's representatives made it clear they expect the zoning to change eventually. They suggested that early cooperation would be more profitable than waiting for inevitability. The veiled threat was unmistakable. Sarah had encountered similar corporate tactics during her time in medical equipment sales pressure, disguised as opportunity, with implied consequences for resistance. What do you think their chances are of changing the zoning? Patricia shrugged, but her expression was troubled. Depends on how much political influence they can buy and whether the community stands together. Development money can be very persuasive to town councils facing budget pressures. After Patricia left, Sarah stood alone in her shop, surrounded by the tools and equipment that represented her family's future, and felt the weight of challenges she hadn't anticipated. Building a successful business was difficult enough, without external pressure threatening the very foundation of her investment. But as she looked around at the improvements they'd made, the relationships they'd begun building, and the evidence of Emma's growing confidence and skills, she felt her determination strengthen rather than waver. She had come too far to be intimidated by corporate pressure. Whatever Atlantic Coastal Development had planned, they would discover that Sarah Martinez was not someone who backed down from a fight, especially when her daughter's future was at stake. What she didn't yet know was that the greatest challenge to her business wasn't corporate development pressure or community skepticism. It was hidden directly beneath her feet, and it would soon transform her modest auto repair shop into the center of an international security crisis that would test every ounce of courage and determination she possessed. The grand opening of Martinez Auto Care exceeded Sarah's most optimistic projections. The combination of free safety inspections and Emma's targeted social media campaign had attracted a steady stream of curious locals, many openly skeptical but unable to resist complimentary service. The transparent pricing structure and detailed digital reports generated cautiously positive feedback, while their specialized knowledge of European vehicles drew interest from seasonal residents willing to drive significant distances to avoid dealer service departments. By closing time, they had scheduled 18 appointments for the following week and received several referrals from satisfied customers. It was an overwhelming success, but it represented genuine progress toward sustainability. Not bad for day one, Frank acknowledged when he stopped by late in the afternoon, though his tone carried the reservation of someone who had seen many promising starts fail to maintain momentum. The real test comes when you start handling complex problems and warranty issues. I know, Sarah agreed, but at least people are willing to give us a chance. As encouraging as the public response had been, it was what happened after closing time that would change everything for Sarah and Emma Martinez. Sarah was in the back storage room, attempting to organize the chaotic inventory system she'd inherited, when she noticed something peculiar about the concrete floor. Near the rear wall, a section roughly 4 feet square showed subtle color variation that was only visible when the overhead light struck it at a specific angle. "That's odd," she murmured, kneeling to examine the area more closely. Running her hand across the surface, she could feel a barely perceptible seam around the discolored section. One corner featured a small depression that might once have served as a handle or grip point. "What are you looking at back there, Mom?" Emma asked, appearing in the doorway with her laptop. "I thought we were ordering pizza to celebrate." "Look at this floor section. Does it seem different to you?" Emma crouched beside her mother, studying the concrete with the fresh perspective of someone not yet accustomed to overlooking details. "It's like a concealed access panel or something. You think there's storage space underneath." "Mitchell never mentioned anything like that," Sarah mused. Neither did the building inspector. They examined the edges more carefully, finding what appeared to be deliberate cuts in the concrete that had been carefully disguised over time. Years of accumulated grime and possibly intentional concealment had effectively hidden the access point from casual observation. Only one way to find out, Sarah decided. Retrieving a pry bar from her tool collection. It took nearly 30 minutes of careful work to break the seal around the edges. Years of accumulated debris and what appeared to be deliberate waterproofing had fused the panel to its frame. When they finally created sufficient leverage to lift the concrete section, it revealed a metal hatch secured with a combination lock that looked decades old. "Okay, this is officially strange," Emma declared, documenting their discovery with her phone's camera. Who installs a locked underground access in an auto repair shop? The combination lock presented an obvious obstacle, but Sarah remembered. The manila envelope Mitchell's son had given her containing business records and account information. Among the mundane financial documents was a small notebook filled with Mitchell's handwritten notes about suppliers, customer preferences, and equipment maintenance schedules. On the inside back cover, written in faded blue ink, was a series of numbers with no accompanying explanation. 154298. Worth trying, Sarah said. Turning the dial carefully. To her amazement, the lock clicked open on the first attempt. No way, Emma whispered. That's either incredibly lucky or really suspicious. Sarah hesitated, suddenly aware they might be crossing a line into something they didn't understand. Maybe we should contact someone before going further. Like who? Emma asked practically. The police? Hello, officer. We found a secret hatch in our legally purchased building and thought you should know. They'll think we're making it up. After another moment's deliberation, Sarah's curiosity prevailed. She pulled the hatch open, revealing a metal ladder descending into darkness. Her flashlight beam illuminated what appeared to be a concrete chamber approximately 8 feet below ground level. I'm going down, she announced. You stay here and call for help if anything seems wrong. Absolutely not, Emma protested. This is exactly how people disappear in mystery novels. Either we both go or neither of us goes. Recognizing the stubborn determination Emma had inherited honestly, Sarah nodded. Fine, but I go first. And if anything seems dangerous, we're out of there immediately. The ladder proved solid despite its age, and the chamber below was surprisingly clean and dry. As Sarah's flashlight swept the space, both women gasped at what they discovered. It wasn't a storage cellar or utility space. It was a fully equipped underground facility, approximately 20 feet square, with walls lined with military-style filing cabinets. A desk bearing what appeared to be vintage computer equipment occupied one corner, while detailed maps covered another wall, marked with pins and annotations in multiple languages. Mom, Emma whispered, her voice tight with uncertainty. What is this place? Sarah shook her head, equally baffled. I have absolutely no idea. They moved cautiously through the room, careful not to disturb anything while trying to understand what they discovered. The filing cabinets were locked, but a set of keys hung on a hook near the desk. Opening the first cabinet revealed folders labeled with alphanumeric codes that meant nothing to either of them. But the contents were deeply unsettling. Technical diagrams, photographs of what appeared to be military installations, and documents in languages that Sarah recognized as Russian, German, and others she couldn't identify filled the carefully organized files. These weren't ordinary business records or personal storage. They looked like intelligence materials. These look like spy files, Sarah said slowly, the implication sending chills through her. Emma had moved to the computer terminal and experimentally pressed its power button. To their surprise, the system hummed to life, bathing the chamber in an eerie blue-green glow. The screen displayed a simple prompt. Enter authorization code. Don't touch anything else, Sarah warned, suddenly acutely aware they were in far over their heads. We need to secure this place and figure out what to do next. Do what? Emma asked, but this time her tone carried genuine concern rather than teenage defiance. It was an excellent question. Who did you contact when you discovered what appeared to be a Cold War-era intelligence facility hidden beneath your newly purchased auto repair shop? The answer came unexpectedly the following morning, before Sarah had decided how to handle their extraordinary discovery. She had secured the hatch, slept poorly, and was considering her options when a dark sedan with government plates pulled into her parking lot. 2 men in conservative suits emerged, their professional bearing and alert posture immediately distinguishing them from typical automotive customers. Sarah's heart hammered as they approached the shop entrance, wondering how they could possibly know about her discovery so quickly. "Miss Martinez?" The older of the two called as they entered. "I'm Agent David Coleman, Department of Defense. This is Agent Torres. We need to speak with you privately about this property." Sarah's mind raced. How could government agents know what she'd found less than 12 hours after the discovery? Had the chamber been monitored somehow? Was Mitchell involved with intelligence? Operations? What had she gotten herself and Emma into? "What's this about?" she asked, trying to project calm while her thoughts churned. "It would be better to discuss this inside," Coleman replied, his tone polite but carrying an authority that discouraged argument. In her small office, with Emma nervously taking notes. On her tablet, Coleman addressed the situation directly. "Ms. Martinez, we have reason to believe you've discovered a classified facility beneath this building. We need you to tell us exactly what you found and what actions you've taken since the discovery." The directness of his question confirmed her suspicions while paradoxically providing some relief. At least they were acknowledging the reality of the situation rather than making her feel crazy. "My daughter and I found a hidden chamber last night," she admitted. "It contains what appears to be intelligence files and computer equipment. We didn't remove anything, and we secured the access point before leaving." Coleman and Torres exchanged meaningful glances before Coleman continued. "Ms. Martinez, what you've discovered is a decommissioned NATO surveillance station, designated Anchor Point Beta. It was officially closed in 1991, but maintained as a contingency site for emergency communications. Mr. Mitchell was a passive custodian, aware of its existence but not its specific purpose or contents. Mitchell was involved with intelligence operations." Sarah asked incredulously. "Not directly," Torres spoke for the first time. "Mitchell was what we call a caretaker asset. He owned property that concealed a classified facility and was compensated for his discretion without knowing operational details. The arrangement should have been terminated when his health declined, but proper protocols weren't followed." Coleman picked up the explanation. "What you found may contain sensitive information that remains classified. We'll need to secure the facility and remove any materials that could compromise ongoing operations. The question is how to accomplish this without destroying your business in the process." The agent's explanation raised as many questions as it answered, but Sarah felt a mixture of relief and apprehension. Relief that she wasn't dealing with active criminal activity, but apprehension about what government involvement might mean for her family's future. "How long will this take?" she asked. "I just opened my business yesterday. Normally we'd need to secure the entire site for several weeks while a specialized team cataloged and removed classified materials," Coleman explained. "But we understand this creates a significant hardship for your operation. We're authorized to work with you on a solution that protects both security interests and your livelihood." After extensive discussion and the signing of multiple confidentiality agreements, they reached a compromise. The government team would establish a secure perimeter around the storage room, creating a separate entrance through the building's rear wall. Sarah would reconfigure her operation to function without accessing that area. And most importantly, neither she nor Emma would discuss their discovery with anyone. "Just out of curiosity," Coleman said as they prepared to coordinate. "The logistics. How did you manage to purchase this property for such a low price when it clearly has strategic value?" Sarah shrugged. "Mitchell's children seemed desperate for a quick sale. I assumed it was because of his medical debts." "Interesting," Coleman mused, making notes in a secure tablet. "Because our records indicate that Mitchell was receiving quarterly compensation for site security until his death last year. Someone was paying him to maintain this facility's concealment, and his children sold it for next to nothing." Emma looked up from her own tablet. "That doesn't make sense," she said with the logical clarity that only teenagers possess. "If someone was paying him to keep it secret, wouldn't they have made sure it stayed secret when he died?" Coleman's expression hardened slightly. Exactly. Either the payments were unauthorized and the responsible party wanted to distance themselves, or someone deliberately arranged for this property to change hands without proper security clearance. Torres leaned forward. Ms. Martinez will need to investigate the financial trail surrounding this sale. In the meantime, maintain absolute discretion about what you've discovered. What appears to be a Cold War relic may have more contemporary significance than we initially realized. As the agents departed to arrange their security team, Sarah sat in her office feeling overwhelmed by the rapid escalation of her situation. Yesterday she had been a single mother trying to build a sustainable business in a skeptical community. Today she was involved in a classified government operation with implications she couldn't begin to understand. "Mom," Emma said quietly, "are we in trouble?" Sarah looked at her daughter's concerned face and felt a surge of protective determination. "No, sweetheart. We found something we weren't supposed to find, but we're handling it responsibly. The government agents seem reasonable, and they're working with us to protect the business. But what if this ruins everything we've built here?" It was a fair question. Sarah had invested not just money but hope into their fresh start in Millbrook Harbor. The relationships they'd begun building, the community acceptance they'd started, earning, the future they'd envisioned, all of it could be jeopardized by circumstances completely beyond their control. "Then we'll figure out another way forward," she said, with more confidence than she felt. "We've overcome bigger challenges than this," Emma nodded, but Sarah could see the worry in her eyes. They had both sacrificed too much to reach this point to accept defeat easily. The next few days would test that resolve in ways neither of them could imagine, as the simple discovery of a hidden chamber began to unravel a conspiracy that reached far beyond their small coastal town, threatening not just their business but their lives. The specialized government team arrived before dawn 3 days later, their unmarked vans and professional efficiency creating a controlled chaos that somehow avoided attracting unwanted attention. Agent Coleman had kept his promise about minimizing disruption to Sarah's business operations, but the reality of accommodating a classified material extraction while running an auto repair shop proved more challenging than either side had anticipated. "We'll establish a secure perimeter around the back storage area," explained Dr. Lisa Chun, the team's technical specialist, as she reviewed the operational plan with Sarah. "The new entrance will be completely separate from your business operations, and we'll install temporary barriers to ensure customer privacy." Sarah nodded, though she felt increasingly uncertain about balancing the needs of a covert government operation with the demands of serving automotive customers. "How will I explain the restricted area to employees and customers?" "Environmental remediation," Coleman suggested. "Old auto shops often require specialized cleanup for contaminated soil or groundwater. It's plausible and discourages curiosity." As the team began their careful work, Sarah attempted to maintain normal business operations in the reduced space. The reconfigured shop layout was cramped but functional, and Emma had updated their online scheduling system to reflect the temporary capacity limitations. Their second week of operation proceeded with surprising smoothness, considering the extraordinary circumstances unfolding behind the temporary walls. The morning brought an unexpected surge in appointments. Word was spreading through Millbrook Harbor about Martinez Auto Care's transparent pricing and thorough explanations of repair needs. Sarah was diagnosing an intermittent electrical problem in a local teacher's Honda when she noticed a silver luxury sedan making its third slow pass in front of the shop. Following Coleman's instructions about reporting unusual interest, she discreetly photographed the vehicle's license plate while continuing her diagnostic work. When the same car parked across the street 30 minutes later and a well-dressed man emerged with a professional camera, she sent the information to Coleman's secure communication number. Agent Torres appeared within minutes, ostensibly delivering coffee but positioning himself to observe the photographer. After a brief phone conversation, he approached Sarah at her diagnostic computer. "Atlantic Coastal Development," he murmured, keeping his voice low. "Robert Caldwell, their head of acquisitions. Been purchasing waterfront properties throughout the region for luxury development projects." "The development company Patricia warned me about," Sarah confirmed. "They want to eliminate industrial businesses like ours." "Interesting timing for such focused interest in your specific property," Torres noted. "Could be coincidence, but we don't believe in coincidences." Sarah considered the implications. "You think there's a connection between the development company and whatever's happening with the underground facility?" "We're investigating all possibilities," Torres replied diplomatically. "In the meantime, if Caldwell approaches you directly, engage normally but share the details with us immediately." The conversation proved prophetic. That afternoon, as Sarah was completing a brake inspection for one of her first repeat customers, Robert Caldwell himself entered the shop. His tailored suit and manicured appearance seemed distinctly out of place among the automotive tools and equipment. "Ms. Martinez?" he called, his practiced smile revealing perfect teeth. "Robert Caldwell, Atlantic Coastal Development. I was hoping to discuss a potential opportunity with you." Sarah wiped her hands on a shop towel, taking a moment to compose herself before responding. "What kind of opportunity, Mr. Caldwell?" "A potentially very lucrative one," he replied, glancing around the shop with barely concealed disdain for its industrial functionality. "ACD is developing a comprehensive harbor village concept for this district upscale retail, luxury condominiums, a state-of-the-art marina. We're transforming this underutilized industrial zone into a destination property." "And you want my location," Sarah concluded. Caldwell's smile widened. "Your property occupies a strategic position in our master plan. We're prepared to make a very generous offer, well above market value. Enough for you to relocate to a more suitable location. Or perhaps pursue other opportunities entirely." The temptation was real. Financial security, an end to the struggle of building a business from nothing, resources to provide for Emma's education without constant worry. But something in Caldwell's overly smooth manner and the timing of his interest triggered her suspicions. "I'm not interested in selling, Mr. Caldwell," she replied firmly. "I've just opened my business and made significant investments in this location." His smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened slightly. "I understand your attachment to your venture, Ms. Martinez. New businesses require emotional investment. But being practical, this location presents significant challenges for automotive operations. Outdated infrastructure, environmental compliance issues, limited expansion potential." He gestured toward the temporarily sealed area. "I understand you're already facing costly remediation requirements. Our offer would eliminate those concerns entirely while providing substantial profit for your initial investment." The specific mention of the restricted area sent alarm signals through Sarah's mind. How did he know about the environmental remediation explanation so quickly? Had he been monitoring the property more closely than casual observation would suggest? "My business is performing well, and I'm addressing building issues systematically," she replied carefully. "This property isn't for sale." Caldwell's expression cooled further. "Ms. Martinez, development is inevitable in this district. The Zoning Commission is already reviewing changes that would significantly impact automotive operations in this area. Early participants in our vision receive premium compensation. Those who delay often find themselves at a disadvantage." The veiled threat was unmistakable, delivered with corporate politeness but carrying clear implications. Sarah had encountered similar tactics during her corporate career, pressure disguised as opportunity, with suggested consequences for resistance. "I'll take my chances with the Zoning Commission," she replied. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have vehicles to finish before closing." After Caldwell departed, Sarah immediately contacted Coleman, relaying the conversation in detail. His response revealed new layers of concern about their situation. "We'll investigate potential connections between a CD and our security issues," he said. "In the meantime, be extremely careful. Development companies typically employ legal and political pressure, not physical threats, but given the unusual circumstances surrounding your property acquisition." "You think I might be in actual danger?" Sarah asked bluntly. "I think caution is warranted until we understand all the players involved," Coleman replied. "We're accelerating our timeline for clearing the facility. The team will work extended hours to complete extraction as quickly as possible." That evening, Sarah and Emma were invited to dinner at Frank and Rosa Torino's home, a welcome distraction from the day's tensions. The Torino house was a modest but well-maintained colonial filled with family photographs and mementos from 4 decades in the automotive business. "Hope you like pasta," Rosa said as she served generous portions of homemade marinara over linguine, Frank's grandmother's recipe. "Been feeding the family for 3 generations." The conversation flowed easily, with Frank sharing stories from his early days as a mechanic while Rosa revealed her background in accounting before joining the family business. Emma and the Torino's college-age daughter Maria discovered shared interests in digital marketing and social media strategy. "You know," Rosa said as they enjoyed coffee after dinner, "when you first showed up at that business meeting, I gave you about 6 weeks. Most newcomers with big plans don't understand how demanding this business really is." "What changed your mind?" Sarah asked. "The way you've handled the challenges you've faced," Frank replied. "Starting a business with limited capital, dealing with an older building's problems, facing pressure from developers, you haven't looked for easy answers or quick fixes. That takes character." "You've been approached by Atlantic Coastal too?" Sarah asked. "Yesterday," Rosa confirmed. "Offered us double the assessed value for our property." When Frank declined, Caldwell mentioned potential changes to environmental regulations that could make automotive repair prohibitively expensive in the Harbor District. Frank's expression darkened. 3 generations of Torinos have operated from that location. "We're not selling out to build condominiums for people who never contribute to this community." The solidarity warmed Sarah unexpectedly. She wasn't alone in resisting the development pressure. But the conversation also revealed how strategically a CD was approaching the district's business owners, using both financial incentives and regulatory threats to achieve their goals. "What if we organize the district businesses?" Sarah suggested. "Presented a united front against the rezoning?" "Might work," Frank agreed. "Several owners are wavering, but if enough of us stand firm, community pressure could influence the town council. Elections are coming up next year." Rosa nodded thoughtfully. "Maria could help coordinate a social media campaign highlighting the economic importance of the working waterfront. Show people what they'd lose if these misses disappear." As they discussed strategy, Sarah felt a growing sense of connection to Millbrook Harbor and its community. Despite the extraordinary secret beneath her shop and the pressure from development interests, she was finding her place among people who valued determination and integrity over quick profits. The sense of belonging made what happened next even more devastating. The following morning brought news that shattered Sarah's growing confidence about their future in Millbrook Harbor. She arrived at the shop early to find Coleman waiting with an expression that immediately put her on alert. "We've got a serious problem," he said without preamble, guiding her to the office where Dr. Chun was coordinating the extraction team's work on a secure laptop. The facility wasn't just monitoring Cold War Soviet submarine activity. It was tracking something much more current and dangerous. On the laptop screen, Chen displayed a series of maps showing the eastern seaboard with particular focus on Millbrook Harbor and surrounding waters. This station was maintained off the books to monitor suspected weapons smuggling through legitimate shipping channels. The data suggests someone has been moving components for radiological devices through commercial freight operations, using this harbor as a transit point. Sarah stared at the technical displays, trying to comprehend the implications. Weapons. Smuggling? Here in Millbrook Harbor? Not exactly nuclear weapons, Coleman clarified, but materials that could be assembled into radiological dispersal devices, dirty bombs. The monitoring equipment was tracking irregular shipping patterns and radiation signatures that didn't match declared cargo manifests. Dr. Chun pointed to highlighted entries on the shipping data. The system flagged a company called Neptune Maritime Consortium. On paper, they're a commercial freight operator specializing in European imports. In reality, they appear repeatedly in intelligence reports about trafficking networks moving weapons components through seemingly legitimate channels. And they're connected to Atlantic Coastal Development? Sarah asked, pieces of a larger puzzle beginning to align. Neptune Maritime is owned by Horizon Industries, Coleman continued, which is a primary investor in Atlantic Coastal Development. We believe a CD's interest in the harbor district isn't just about luxury development. It's about controlling access to the waterfront and eliminating potential witnesses or interference with their shipping operations. The revelation hit Sarah like a physical blow. The pressure to sell her property wasn't simply corporate greed or development opportunism. It was part of a criminal conspiracy involving weapons trafficking that put her family directly in harm's way. That's why they're pushing so hard for rezoning, she realized. Industrial businesses with people coming and going at all hours are harder to control than upscale residential developments with security gates and limited access. Exactly, Dr. Chun confirmed. And your shop is particularly problematic because it literally sits on top of a monitoring station designed to detect exactly what they're doing. When you refuse to sell, I became a potential obstacle, Sarah finished. One they might decide to remove by means beyond legal pressure. Coleman's expression was grim. We're coordinating with the FBI to move against Neptune Maritime and their trafficking network, but that will take time. In the interim, we strongly recommend protective custody for you and Emma until we can secure the evidence needed for prosecution. The suggestion felt like a death sentence for everything Sarah had worked to build. Protective custody meant abandoning the shop, disappearing from the community just as she was beginning to find acceptance and belonging. It meant disrupting Emma's life again, running from danger instead of confronting it. How long? She asked, her voice tight with emotion. Impossible to predict, Coleman admitted. Weeks, possibly months if this becomes a formal witness protection situation. No, the word escaped before Sarah had fully processed her decision. There has to be another way. Coleman's expression hardened. Ms. Martinez, I don't think you fully appreciate the seriousness of this situation. These people move weapons components that could kill thousands. They won't hesitate to eliminate anyone who threatens their operation. I understand the danger, Sarah insisted, her mind racing through alternatives. But running away solves nothing. It lets them win, not just against me, but against this entire community. What happens to Frank and Rose's shop, to Patricia's parts? Business to everyone else standing against the development. That's not our primary concern, Dr. Chun interjected. Our priority is securing the intelligence materials and ensuring civilian safety. Sarah paced the small office, frustration building. Throughout her life, she had faced seemingly insurmountable obstacles, raising Emma alone, surviving corporate downsizing, starting over with nothing but determination. Each time, the easy path would have been retreat, acceptance of limitation, settling for less than she knew was possible. What if we use this situation instead of running from it? She suggested, an idea forming. You need evidence against Neptune Maritime and their trafficking operation. What if I helped you get it? Coleman looked skeptical. What exactly are you proposing? Caldwell wants this property desperately. Let's use that. I'll contact him, say I've reconsidered his offer, but I want to meet with the principal investors to discuss terms. If he's connected to the weapons trafficking, a face-to-face meeting could provide the evidence you need. Absolutely not, Coleman said flatly. We don't use civilians as operational assets. You wouldn't be using me, Sarah argued. I'd be volunteering. And I wouldn't be alone. You and your team would monitor everything. A direct meeting might reveal connections we haven't documented yet. Dr. Chun looked up from her laptop. It could accelerate our timeline significantly. A recorded conversation with the principals could establish conspiracy charges without waiting for the shipping evidence to be fully analyzed. It's too dangerous, Coleman maintained. These aren't white-collar criminals playing financial games. They're moving materials for weapons of mass destruction. Sarah thought about Emma's future, about the community that was finally accepting them, about the principle of standing up for what was right, even when it was frightening. Life is dangerous, she countered. I didn't come this far to hide in a safe house while everything I've built gets destroyed. I'm offering you a way to stop these people while protecting my family's future. The debate continued for over an hour, with agents weighing operational security against the potential intelligence value of Sarah's proposal. Eventually, a compromise emerged that satisfied neither her desire for immediate action nor their preference for complete risk elimination. Sarah would contact Caldwell expressing renewed interest in selling, but any meeting would be strictly controlled. The encounter would take place in a public location with comprehensive surveillance and immediate intervention capability. Emma would remain under protective supervision, regardless of the operation's outcome. As the agents finalized their security protocols, Sarah called Emma to the office to explain the situation. Her daughter's reaction surprised her. You're going to meet with the bad guys to help catch them? Emma asked, her expression hovering between concern and admiration. I'm going to do what I can to protect our future here, Sarah replied carefully. The government agents will be monitoring everything. It's not as dangerous as it sounds. Emma studied her mother's face with the perceptive intensity that had always made her seem older than her years. Dad always said you were the bravest person he knew. I didn't understand what he meant until we moved here and started the shop. The reference to Emma's father, who had abandoned them when the responsibilities of family life became overwhelming, struck Sarah deeply. She had never thought of her perseverance as courage. It had simply been necessity. The only way forward when retreat meant abandoning her daughter's future. I'm not brave, sweetheart. I'm just stubborn enough to keep going when things get difficult. That's what courage is, Mom, Emma said with quiet conviction. Doing what needs to be done even when you're scared. That evening, as Sarah prepared for what could be the most dangerous encounter of her life, she reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. A simple $900 investment in a failing auto shop had led to discovering a NATO intelligence facility, uncovering an international weapons trafficking conspiracy, and finding a community worth fighting to protect. Tomorrow would determine whether her courage was sufficient to see them through to safety and success, or whether the forces arrayed against them were too powerful to overcome. But as she looked around the shop they had transformed through determination and hard work, she felt certain of one thing: whatever happened, she would face it without backing down. The stakes had escalated far beyond business survival or community acceptance. Now they involved national security, international criminality, and the safety of countless innocent people. But the core principle remained unchanged: individual courage could create positive change, even against seemingly impossible odds. Sarah Martinez had come to Millbrook Harbor, seeking only a fresh start for herself and her daughter. What she had found instead was a community worth defending, a cause worthy of risk, and the opportunity to prove that ordinary people could accomplish extraordinary things when they refused to surrender to fear. The meeting with Caldwell and his associates was scheduled for the following evening. By then, Sarah would discover whether her determination was strong enough to help bring down an international conspiracy, or whether she had finally encountered a challenge too dangerous to overcome. But as she secured the shop for the night, checking the locks and setting the alarm system that now protected both automotive equipment and classified government operations, she felt the same quiet confidence that had carried her through every previous crisis. She had come too far to fail. Now, the next morning brought an unexpected complication that nearly derailed their carefully planned operation. Patricia Kellerman arrived at the shop earlier than usual, her expression troubled and her manner uncharacteristically hesitant. "Sarah, we need to talk," she said, glancing around nervously. "There's something I should have told you weeks ago, and I'm afraid it might put you in danger." Coleman, who had been coordinating security preparations in the back office, emerged at the sound of Patricia's voice. His professional instincts immediately recognized the signs of someone carrying dangerous knowledge. "Miss Kellerman," he said, showing his credentials. "Agent Coleman, Department of Defense. What information are you referring to?" Patricia's eyes widened as she processed the presence of federal agents in Sarah's shop. "I knew it. I knew there was more to that underground room than environmental contamination." Sarah exchanged glances with Coleman before making a decision that violated their security protocols, but aligned with her principles about community trust. "Patricia, what we're about to tell you is classified, but you're already involved whether we acknowledge it or not. The room beneath my shop was a NATO intelligence facility. We've discovered evidence of weapons trafficking through the harbor, and Atlantic coastal development appears to be connected to the criminal operation." Rather than appearing shocked, Patricia nodded grimly. "That explains what my nephew discovered at the Harbor Authority. He's been tracking irregular cargo manifests, containers that don't match their declared contents, shipping schedules that avoid normal inspection protocols." She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila folder. When he started asking questions about Neptune Maritime Consortium, he was approached by two men who told him curiosity could be dangerous for harbor workers. He came to me because he was scared, but he'd already documented patterns that prove someone's been moving undeclared materials through commercial shipping. Coleman accepted the folder, scanning its contents with growing interest. "This corroborates our intelligence about the trafficking network. Your nephew may have evidence that could help prosecute the entire conspiracy." "There's more," Patricia continued. "Yesterday, Robert Caldwell approached my nephew directly, offered him a job with a CD security division, essentially bribing him to stop investigating shipping irregularities. When my nephew declined, Caldwell suggested that accidents happen to people who interfere with important business operations. The direct threat against Patricia's family member elevated the situation beyond corporate pressure into criminal intimidation." Sarah felt a surge of anger that these people were targeting the community she had come to care about. "We'll need to provide protection for your nephew," Coleman said. "And this information actually strengthens our operational plan. If they're threatening harbor workers, it suggests they're moving toward more aggressive tactics to secure their position." Sarah made a decision that surprised everyone, including herself. "Patricia, I want you to come to the meeting tonight." "What meeting?" Patricia asked. "I'm meeting with Caldwell and his investors, ostensibly to discuss selling my property. The government agents will be monitoring everything to gather evidence about the trafficking conspiracy. But if you're there as my business advisor, it might encourage them to reveal more about their operations." Coleman shook his head immediately. "Absolutely not. We agreed to one civilian participant under controlled conditions. Adding another person exponentially increases the risk. But it also increases the potential intelligence value," Sarah argued. "Patricia knows the local business community, the harbor operations, the political dynamics. Her presence might prompt them to discuss aspects of their plan they wouldn't reveal to an outsider." Dr. Chun, who had been listening from the doorway, offered a different perspective. Actually, it could work in our favor. If they perceive Ms. Martinez as having local support for selling, they might be more forthcoming about their long-term development plans and operational requirements. The debate continued for nearly an hour, with security concerns balanced against operational advantages. Eventually, they reached a modified agreement. Patricia could attend the meeting as Sarah's business consultant, but both women would wear concealed recording devices and remain in constant contact with the surveillance team. As the afternoon progressed, final preparations for the evening's operation created an atmosphere of controlled tension throughout the shop. Emma had been moved to a secure location with Agent Torres, despite her protests about missing the exciting part of their adventure. Sarah spent the hours between appointments, reviewing her cover story and practicing natural responses to various scenarios the agents anticipated. "Remember," Coleman briefed her one final time, "your goal is to appear genuinely interested in selling while encouraging them to reveal details about their broader operation. Don't push for information they wouldn't naturally share, and never put yourself at risk for intelligence value." "What if they become suspicious?" Sarah asked. "The moment we detect any threat, we intervene immediately," Dr. Chun assured her. "You'll have multiple agents within 50 feet at all times, and your recording devices include emergency activation signals." As closing time approached, Sarah changed into business attire that felt foreign after weeks in work clothes. The concealed recording equipment was virtually undetectable, but she remained acutely aware of its presence and the extraordinary situation it represented. Patricia arrived precisely at 6 p.m., dressed professionally, but carrying the same determined expression that had helped her family's parts business survive decades of economic challenges. "Ready for this?" she asked Sarah. "As ready as anyone can be for meeting international weapons traffickers disguised as real estate developers," Sarah replied with dark humor. "When you put it like that, it sounds completely insane," Patricia observed, "which probably means it's exactly what we need to do." Together, they walked toward what could be either the most important meeting of their lives or the beginning of a nightmare from which they might not emerge safely. But as they approached the restaurant where Caldwell waited with his mysterious associates, both women carried the quiet confidence of people who had decided that some things were worth fighting for, regardless of the personal cost. The harbor district that had become their home, the community that had finally accepted them, and the principle that ordinary people could stand against powerful forces when they refused to be intimidated. These values were worth defending, even against an international conspiracy that had already demonstrated its willingness to use threats and violence. In a few hours, they would discover whether their courage was sufficient to help bring down a criminal operation that threatened not just their community, but potentially thousands of innocent lives. The stakes could not be higher, but neither could their determination to see justice done and their community protected. The meeting that would determine everything was about to begin. Lighthouse Restaurant perched on Millbrook Harbor's scenic waterfront, its windows offering panoramic views of the marina where pleasure boats bobbed alongside commercial fishing vessels. Under normal circumstances, it would have been an idyllic setting for a business dinner. Tonight, it served as the stage for what could either expose an international weapons trafficking conspiracy or end in disaster for two women who had refused to be intimidated. Sarah and Patricia arrived precisely at 7 p.m., their professional attire and confident bearing masking the sophisticated recording equipment hidden beneath their clothing. Agent Coleman's surveillance team had been in position for over an hour, strategically placed throughout the restaurant and surrounding area with clear lines of sight to every exit. Robert Caldwell waited at a corner table overlooking the harbor, but he wasn't alone. Two men in expensive suits flanked him, their alert postures and calculating eyes suggesting backgrounds far removed from legitimate real estate development. As Sarah and Patricia approached, she felt the weight of the concealed recording device, and the knowledge that everything said in the next hour could determine the fate of her community, and potentially save countless lives. "Ms. Martinez," Caldwell greeted them with his practiced smile, though something in his expression suggested heightened tension. "So pleased you've reconsidered our offer. And Ms. Kellerman, what a pleasant surprise. I wasn't aware you were advising Ms. Martinez on business matters. Patricia's been invaluable in helping me understand the local business climate," Sarah replied smoothly, settling into her chair while Patricia took the seat beside her. "When making a decision of this magnitude, it's important to have guidance from someone with deep community roots." Caldwell nodded approvingly before gesturing to his companions. "Allow me to introduce Marcus Brennan and Victor Kozlov, key investors in our harbor development initiative. They're here to discuss the broader vision for Millbrook Harbor's transformation." Sarah shook their hands, noting the barely perceptible accents that suggested international backgrounds. Brennan appeared to be in his early 50s, with silver hair and the confident bearing of someone accustomed to wielding significant power. Kozlov was younger, perhaps 40, with intense blue eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of their surroundings. "Thank you for meeting with us," Sarah said, projecting the enthusiasm of someone genuinely excited about a potential windfall. "I have to admit, when Patricia and I discussed your offer, the financial possibilities were quite compelling." "Smart woman," Brennan said, his voice carrying a slight European accent. "Too many business owners in this area cling to outdated models instead of embracing inevitable progress. The transformation we're planning will benefit everyone, those wise enough to participate early, of course." Patricia leaned forward with apparent interest. "I've been curious about the scope of your development plans. The harbor district has been industrial for decades. What specific changes are you envisioning?" Kozlov answered before Caldwell could respond. "Complete redevelopment of the waterfront into a luxury destination. High-end retail, premium residential units, state-of-the-art marina facilities capable of accommodating much larger vessels than currently use this harbor." "Larger vessels?" Sarah asked innocently. "Like cruise ships or mega yachts?" "Among other possibilities," Brennan replied carefully. "Modern commercial shipping requires deeper water access and specialized handling facilities. Our investors have extensive experience in international freight operations." The mention of commercial shipping sent a chill through Sarah, but she maintained her interested expression. "That sounds like it would create significant employment opportunities for local workers." "Selected employment opportunities," Kozlov corrected, his tone suggesting that not all current residents would be welcome in their new vision. "Premium destinations require carefully managed staffing to maintain appropriate standards." Patricia's eyebrows rose slightly. "What about existing businesses? Family operations that have served this community for generations?" Caldwell's smile became more strained. "Change always involves difficult transitions, Ms. Kellerman, but our compensation packages are designed to ease those adjustments. Early cooperation receives premium consideration." "And late cooperation?" Patricia asked with seeming casualness. The temperature at the table dropped perceptibly. Brennan's expression hardened while Kozlov's hand moved slightly closer to his jacket in a gesture that Agent Coleman's team would certainly notice. "Market forces and regulatory evolution eventually compel adaptation," Brennan said, his diplomatic language carrying unmistakable threats. "Those who resist progress often find their positions becoming untenable." Sarah felt her recording device capturing every word while fighting to maintain her cover. "I can understand the business pressures. That's actually part of why I'm reconsidering your offer. The auto repair business is becoming increasingly complex, especially with environmental regulations." "Exactly," Caldwell said, seizing on her apparent concern. "Your property, for instance, faces significant compliance challenges. Environmental remediation, upgraded electrical systems, modern diagnostic equipment, The costs are substantial for a small operation. Plus the special considerations, Kozlov added, his eyes narrowing as he studied Sarah's reaction. Some properties in this district have unique characteristics that create additional ... complications. Sarah's heart rate accelerated, but she forced herself to appear puzzled rather than alarmed. Special considerations? I'm not sure I understand. Brennan leaned forward, his voice dropping to a more confidential tone. Ms. Martinez, we're aware that your property has certain historical features that most buyers wouldn't appreciate. Features that could become problematic if they attracted unwanted attention from regulatory agencies. The direct reference to the underground facility confirmed that they knew far more about her property than any legitimate development company should. Sarah felt the weight of the recording equipment and the knowledge that they were gathering exactly the evidence Coleman needed. I'm still not following, she said, maintaining her confused expression. Are you referring to the environmental contamination issues? Among other things, Kozlov replied, studying her face intently. Old buildings in this district sometimes have infrastructure that served purposes beyond normal commercial operations. Infrastructure that requires discreet management. Patricia spoke up with apparent innocence. That sounds mysterious. What kind of infrastructure could create regulatory problems for new owners? The three men exchanged glances before Brennan made a decision that would prove to be their downfall. Ms. Kellerman, since you're advising Ms. Martinez, perhaps it's appropriate to be more direct about the situation. He pulled out his phone and showed them what appeared to be architectural diagrams. Your friend's property contains a decommissioned government facility that was never properly cleared according to official protocols. The kind of facility that could create significant embarrassment for certain parties if its existence became public knowledge. Sarah stared at the diagrams, her mind racing. They not only knew about the NATO facility, but had detailed knowledge of its construction and purpose. This wasn't casual reconnaissance, it was inside information that suggested connections within the intelligence community itself. Government facility? She asked, her confusion now genuine. Like what kind of government facility? The kind that monitored activities in this harbor that some parties preferred to conduct without official oversight, Kozlov said bluntly. Activities that will continue once we've established proper control over the waterfront district. The admission was more explicit than Sarah had dared hope for. They were essentially confessing to knowledge of both the monitoring station and their intention to use the harbor for illegal activities. What kind of activities require that level of secrecy? Patricia asked, her tone suggesting business curiosity rather than suspicion. Brennan's smile returned, but it carried a predatory quality that made Sarah's skin crawl. Let's just say that modern international commerce sometimes involves cargo that benefits from streamlined inspection processes. Cargo that contributes significantly to the profitability of our development projects. Specialized cargo handling, Caldwell added, apparently believing he was being helpful. Neptune Maritime Consortium has developed extensive expertise in managing sensitive shipments through smaller harbors like this one. The mention of Neptune Maritime by name was exactly what Coleman's team needed to establish the conspiracy charges. Sarah felt a surge of triumph beneath her fear, knowing they were gathering evidence that could destroy the entire trafficking network. That sounds like a sophisticated operation, she said admiringly. How long have you been developing this expertise? Several years, Kozlov replied with evident pride. Our network extends throughout the eastern seaboard, but Millbrook Harbor offers unique advantages. Remote enough to avoid excessive scrutiny, deep enough for ocean-going vessels, close enough to major population centers for efficient distribution. Distribution of what? Patricia asked, her innocent curiosity pushing them toward even more damaging admissions. The three men exchanged another series of glances before Brennan, apparently decided they had already revealed too much to maintain pretense. Materials that certain international clients require for their own specialized projects, he said carefully. Materials that are difficult to obtain through conventional channels due to excessive regulatory restrictions. Sarah felt sick as the implications became clear. They were talking about components for weapons of mass destruction, with the casual confidence of people discussing ordinary business transactions. "It sounds like you've built quite an empire," she said, fighting to keep admiration in her voice, while horror filled her thoughts. "Empire is an appropriate term," Brennan agreed. "But empires require territorial control to function effectively. Which brings us back to your property, Miss Martinez. We need that location, and we're prepared to be very generous to ensure your cooperation." "How generous?" Sarah asked, playing her role to the end. Caldwell smiled broadly. $500,000. Cash, complete within 72 hours of signed agreements. The offer was staggering, more than 50 times what she had paid for the property. But it also revealed the desperation behind their pressure campaign. "That's incredibly generous," Patricia said, her tone suggesting she was seriously impressed. "But what guarantees can you provide about the environmental cleanup and any legal liabilities?" "There won't be any environmental issues to worry about," Kozlov said dismissively. "Once we control the property, any inconvenient discoveries will be handled through appropriate channels. Certain government contacts ensure that regulatory problems ... disappear." "Government contacts?" Sarah asked, her curiosity now genuine and alarmed. "Not everyone in the intelligence community appreciates excessive oversight of their retirement income," Brennan explained with a cold smile. "Former agents often find private sector consulting arrangements quite profitable, especially when their expertise involves managing sensitive facilities. The revelation that they had corrupted intelligence officials to protect their operations added another layer to the conspiracy. Sarah realized they weren't just dealing with criminal entrepreneurs, but with a network that included treasonous government insiders. "This all sounds very professional," she said, trying to project continued interest while internally recoiling from their casual criminality. "When would you need a final decision?" "Tonight," Kozlov said bluntly, his expression hardening. "Our timeline has accelerated due to certain complications. We need control of that property immediately." The sudden time pressure confirmed Sarah's suspicions that her discovery of the facility had disrupted their plans. They were moving aggressively because they knew their operation was at risk. "Tonight seems rather rushed for such a major decision," Patricia observed. "Miss Kellerman," Brennan said, his voice carrying clear menace for the first time, "I don't think you fully understand the situation you've inserted yourself into. This isn't a negotiation between equals. This is an opportunity to profit from inevitable change, or to become an obstacle that requires removal." The explicit threat against Patricia triggered Sarah's protective instincts and her sense that they had gathered sufficient evidence. She needed to extract herself and Patricia from the situation before it escalated to violence. "I appreciate the urgency," she said, reaching for her purse as if to retrieve documentation. "But even with such a generous offer, I'll need time to review the paperwork with my attorney." "There is no paperwork," Kozlov said flatly. "There is acceptance of our offer and immediate transfer of property, or there are consequences. Choose quickly." As he spoke, both Brennan and Kozlov shifted in their seats, positioning themselves to block any attempt at departure. Sarah realized they had moved beyond business pressure into active intimidation. "Consequences?" she asked, playing for time while hoping Coleman's team was monitoring the escalating situation. "Accidents happen to people who interfere with important business operations," Caldwell said, his corporate facade finally cracking to reveal the criminal beneath. "Automotive repair can be such a dangerous profession. Hydraulic equipment fails. Electrical systems spark, chemical vapors accumulate." "Are you threatening us?" Patricia asked, her voice carrying outrage rather than fear. "We're explaining reality," Brennan replied coldly. "You can profit from cooperation or suffer from resistance, but you cannot prevent what's already in motion." Sarah felt the situation spiraling toward violence and made a desperate decision. "Actually, gentlemen, I think you're the ones who don't understand the reality of your situation." The three men tensed at her change in tone, their expressions shifting from confident intimidation to wary suspicion. "What exactly do you mean by that?" Kozlov asked, his hand moving closer to his jacket. "I mean that every word you've spoken tonight has been recorded by federal agents," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the danger. "Your weapons trafficking conspiracy, your government corruption, your threats against American citizens, all of it documented for prosecution." The restaurant erupted into controlled chaos as Agent Coleman's surveillance team converged on their table from multiple directions. Federal agents with drawn weapons surrounded Brennan, Kozlov, and Caldwell before they could reach for any weapons or attempt to flee. "Federal agents, hands on the table now," Coleman commanded, his professional authority cutting through the confusion. The look of shocked betrayal on Caldwell's face as he was handcuffed provided Sarah with a moment of pure satisfaction amidst the adrenaline surge. His carefully constructed facade of legitimate business development crumbled as agents recited the litany of charges: conspiracy to traffic weapons components, corruption of government officials, extortion, and threats against federal witnesses. "You have no idea what you've interfered with," Brennan snarled as agents secured him. "This operation involves people far more powerful than small-town federal agents." "Then they'll have excellent accommodations in federal prison," Coleman replied dryly, "along with the rest of your trafficking network." As the suspects were led away in handcuffs, Sarah slumped in her chair, the tension of the evening finally catching up with her. Patricia reached over and squeezed her hand, both women processing the magnitude of what they had just accomplished. "Is it over?" Patricia asked, her voice carrying exhaustion and relief in equal measure. "The immediate threat is over," Coleman confirmed, approaching their table as the restaurant returned to some semblance of normalcy. "But there will be trials, testimony, and probably months of legal proceedings. What you've done tonight will help prosecute an international conspiracy that threatened national security." Dr. Chun joined them, her expression carrying professional satisfaction. The recordings captured enough evidence to dismantle their entire network. Neptune Maritime, Horizon Industries, the corrupted intelligence officials will be able to prosecute everyone involved. Sarah felt a wave of relief so profound it was almost overwhelming. "What happens to our businesses? To the community?" "The development pressure disappears immediately," Coleman assured her. "With the primary investors in federal custody and their assets frozen, Atlantic Coastal Development's Harbor Village project is dead. The industrial district remains exactly as it is." "And Emma?" Sarah asked, her maternal concerns paramount. "Despite everything else, safe and eager to see you," Agent Torres confirmed, approaching with his phone already dialing. "She's been monitoring the operation from our secure location and wants to know if she can finally tell people her mother is a hero." The comment brought tears to Sarah's eyes as the full weight of their ordeal and its successful resolution finally hit her. They had not only survived, but had helped protect their community and potentially thousands of innocent lives from a weapons trafficking conspiracy. 3 days later, Sarah stood in the center service bay of Martinez Auto Care, watching as Dr. Chun's team completed the final stages of the classified material extraction. The underground facility would be permanently sealed and officially removed from all government records, leaving no trace of its existence for future property owners to stumble upon. "Hard to believe it's almost over," Emma said, appearing at her mother's elbow with a tablet displaying news coverage of the arrests. "Look at this, they're calling you and Patricia heroes of national security." Sarah smiled at her daughter's excitement while feeling profoundly grateful that their nightmare was finally ending. I just wanted to protect our business and our community. Everything else was just doing what needed to be done. That's what heroes do, Mom, Emma replied with the matter-of-fact wisdom that continually amazed her mother. They do what needs to be done even when it's scary. The shop bell chimed, announcing the arrival of Frank and Rosa Torino, followed by Patricia and several other business owners from the Harbor District. They had come to express their gratitude and to discuss the future of their newly secure community. Heard the last of the government equipment was being removed today, Frank said, surveying the shop that had been at the center of so much drama. Thought we should mark the occasion properly. Rosa carried a large covered dish that filled the air with the aroma of her famous marinara sauce. Family celebration dinner, she announced. For the family that saved our community. Patricia approached Sarah with a manila envelope and an expression of deep gratitude. The Harbor District Business Association met this morning, she said. We voted unanimously to offer you the position of president. Someone who would risk everything to protect this community clearly has the leadership qualities we need. The offer touched Sarah more deeply than any amount of money or recognition could have. Just months earlier, these same people had viewed her as an outsider with little chance of success. Now they were asking her to lead them into the future. I'd be honored, she replied, accepting the envelope containing her official appointment. Emma beamed with pride as the assembled business owners broke into applause. Does this mean we're really staying? She asked quietly. We're not just staying, Sarah assured her daughter. We're home. As the celebration continued around them, Sarah reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought them to this point. A simple $900 investment in a failing auto shop had led to uncovering an international weapons trafficking conspiracy, exposing government corruption, and ultimately strengthening the bonds of community in ways she never could have imagined. Underground chamber with its NATO secrets would remain sealed forever, but its discovery had revealed something far more valuable, the truth that ordinary people, armed with courage and determination, could stand against powerful forces and create positive change that rippled far beyond their own lives. 6 months later, Martinez Auto Care had become one of the most successful automotive businesses in the region. Sarah's transparent pricing and digital customer service had attracted clients from throughout the area, while her leadership of the Harbor District Business Association had helped revitalize the entire waterfront community. Emma had started a small business of her own, providing social media and digital marketing services to local companies. Her experience during the crisis had matured her in remarkable ways, and she was already planning to study international relations in college with the goal of working in national security. The Torino family had become like extended relatives, with Rosa teaching Sarah traditional recipes while Frank shared decades of mechanical wisdom. Patricia's parts business was thriving as the district's automotive shops experienced unprecedented growth, and her nephew had been recruited by the FBI's Financial Crimes Unit based on his investigation skills. One evening, as Sarah was closing the shop after a particularly busy day, she noticed a car slowing as it passed the building. For a moment, old instincts triggered alarm, but the vehicle continued on without stopping. The danger was past, but the vigilance it had taught her remained a valuable legacy. Mom, you ready to go home? Emma called from the office where she was finishing homework while managing the shop's social media accounts. Almost, sweetheart. Just checking the locks. As she secured the building that had become the foundation of their new life, Sarah felt profound gratitude for the chain of events that had brought them here. The $900 investment had purchased far more than a failing auto shop. It had bought them a place to belong, a community to serve, and the opportunity to prove that, with enough courage and determination, any obstacle could be overcome. The underground chamber that had once held NATO secrets was now permanently sealed. But the real secret had been much simpler. that home isn't a place you find, but a place you create through connection, commitment, and the willingness to fight for what matters most. Standing in the parking lot where her journey had begun just months earlier, Sarah Martinez smiled at the sight of her thriving business, her confident daughter, and the community that had become their chosen family. The single mother who had purchased a failing auto shop for $900 had discovered something worth far more than money: the knowledge that ordinary courage could create extraordinary outcomes when applied with determination and integrity. The NATO secrets had been removed and forgotten, but the real discovery would last forever. She had found home. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.